My name is Tammy Dunn. I am with the Office of Housing Counseling at HUD, and I am joined by my teammate, Robin Penick, and also joined by Ann Keeney with the Seattle Housing Authority. Kind of how we're going to be setting this up today is we are going to have, Robin and I are going to do our presentation first, and then we're going to pause for a few minutes for some Q&A, and then we will turn the remainder of the program over to Ann for her to complete it. Anyway, so that's kind of how we're going to be setting things up today. We're going to primarily be focusing on the housing counseling certification rule and how it applies to the FSS programs. We're really happy you all are joining us today. Robin and I are both housing program specialists with the Office of Housing Counseling, like I said a minute ago, the Office of Outreach and Capacity Building. Again, we will be answering questions at the end. We're going to cover 3 different areas. We're going to cover what the Housing Counseling Office and Program actually does. We're going to cover the Housing Counseling Certification, and then your next steps to consider. Oh, I just lost the PowerPoint. Hold on just a second, folks, while we get the PowerPoint back. Robin, it went away.
I think if you just hit share one more time, if you hit share down at the bottom, Timmy.
If I'm not sharing my screen. It's Robin.
I'm looking. Are we back?
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
HUD approved housing counseling agencies can be public or nonprofit organizations. This is where a lot of active PHAs would come into play. There's almost 1,700 agencies that currently participate in HUD's housing counseling program. They can be funded through ANOFA, but not all of them are. There are network agencies, your state housing finance agencies, which are like Kentucky Housing Corporation, or I think every state has at least one. There are intermediary organizations as well. So there are a lot of different options for who can be a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. What is housing counseling? This is really important. The definition of what is housing counseling. It's independent. That's one of the biggest things. Expert advice, which is customized to the needs of the consumer. That is the biggest thing, is that it is provided specifically for that consumer or consumers. It consists of intake, budget, financial and housing affordability analysis, follow-up, and forming a plan. So that's primarily what housing counseling is working individually with a person or persons, sometimes it's a couple, and it can be anything from first-time home buyer to foreclosure prevention, bankruptcy prevention, somebody that's renting and wanting to figure out how to buy a house. There's as many kinds as there are people. Next slide, please.
Not sure what's happening. I am on the next slide on the PowerPoint.
Okay. All right, thanks. Again, like I said, the housing counseling is individualized assistance that is customized to a consumer or consumers. Group education, which you see a whole lot of, you see a lot of companies providing group education on financial analysis and that kind of thing, is not considered housing counseling. Online education all by itself does not meet the HUD programmatic definition of housing counseling because it does have to be individualized. So there are certain online housing counseling modules that do count, but not all of them do. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the final rule. The housing counseling certification rule is administered by HUD, and it's only provided by organizations and counselors that are certified by the secretary. The certification rule was initially published in December of 2016. The original exam, because to become a housing counselor, you have to pass an exam and actually work for a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. The exam became available on August 1st of 2017. Currently, it has a final date. It got moved due to the COVID virus. It was August 1st of 2020. They have extended it to August 1st of 2021. Next slide. And the reason that they extended it to 2021, again, was due to COVID-19 to make sure that vital housing counselors were still available to the public during this national emergency. Again, a housing counselor is a counselor who passes the exam. Again, the final date is August 1st of 2021. I would strongly encourage you, if you are considering taking the exam, not to wait till July of next year, because our systems do get bogged down and you don't want to be in the last group that does not get certified. You have to work for a HUD approved agency, and that is what makes you a HUD certified housing counselor. What are the benefits of being a HUD certified counselor? You get a wide range of knowledge. In fact, I was told today that the test comes from a variety of questions. There are up to 748 questions available for the test. You do not answer 748 questions, but that's approximately how many different questions there are. So that just goes to show how much of a knowledge base that you would gain by studying for it. It is a prestigious credential for the counselors. You get increased visibility to, among other HUD counseling agencies. People can refer to you. It elevates the value of the program. It just has a numerous amount of benefits to become a HUD certified housing counselor. There are 18 covered programs by the final rule, in which housing counseling is required by HUD. It is either through programs that are funded under a HUD program. It's required by the grantee or sub-grantee of a HUD program as a condition of them receiving assistance. This could be what FSS program is, or if someone is referred. Here is a little bit more about the FSS. The FSS NOFA does allow for coordinators to provide homeownership counseling to FSS participants only. If the homeownership counseling is performed using FSS funds, then that coordinator must be a HUD certified housing counselor, which means the PHA must be a HUD approved housing counseling agency by August 1st, 2021. Any referrals by any FSS coordinator must be made in order for them to participate in the HUD housing counseling program. It's vitally important that FSS participants are aware of this, and that PHAs are aware of this if you do have an FSS program. Staff who, on the other hand, staff who just fund or oversee or administer a program and do not provide direct contact or housing counseling are not required to become HUD certified counselors. You only use that designation if you have passed the exam and you're activated by your agency and FHA connection. Next steps, I'm going to pass this on to Robin.
Thanks, Tammy. And I hope everybody's been able to see the presentation. I'm not seeing it myself. So what I want to talk about are the next steps that agencies can take if they're interested in pursuing housing counselor certification and having the agency participate in the housing counseling program. So if you think you want to join the program or think that you're going to be affected by the rule and have to provide certified housing counseling, what are the next steps you need to take? On the screen now is our web page for how to become a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. And we have information on this page that walks you through the steps on how to apply to become approved. And if you notice on the right-hand side of this page, there's a green button that says Access the Tool. This is an agency eligibility tool. And what this does is describes in detail the 20-some criteria that agencies need to meet in order to become approved. So it's a real handy tool, and it also provides education for each of the criteria and what agencies have to do to meet that criteria. So if you're interested at all, this is the best place to start. And even if you're only faintly interested, it's just a good way to educate yourself on what it takes to be a HUD housing counseling agency. We also have resources on our website where you can search by state and locality on where existing HUD-approved housing counseling agencies are. And that may help you in your program when you go to refer clients to housing counseling agencies. Or you may determine after looking at this map that, hey, there's a big need for housing counseling services, and there's not an agency currently in my community, and it just may give you some more information on why it might be good to participate in our program. The next resource we have listed here is our website, where you can look specifically to find agencies that currently have HUD certified housing counselors. This link allows you to look up by state or by city those agencies that currently do have certified counselors. And of course, in August 1st, 2021, everyone listed on this site will have certified housing counselors. This page is specifically devoted to those other HUD programs that are mentioned in the final rule that are affected by housing counselor certification, and whether or not their programs need to provide housing counseling by a HUD certified counselor. And this page will also assist you in determining if your program's affected. And you can see on the screen now the three lime green boxes where we have specific programs listed and have sample criteria or questions that people from that program may have regarding certification and whether or not that program is affected by the rule. So we just highly encourage you, especially if you're coming from the public housing arena, from FSS, to look at this page in addition to these other resources that we're showing you. And here are some additional links to find us on the website. HUDexchange.info, housing counseling certification. We have a homepage just for certification. And this is the link for that homepage. And you can always write us with any kind of specific question that you might have at housing.counseling@hud.gov. So I think at this point, Tammy and I would like to open the mic, if you can, to take any questions, or if you have questions in the chat box that if anybody's typed in, we would be glad to address those.
There's nothing in the chat box right now, Robin.
Okay. And not sure if just trying to determine if we've got FSS attendees or public housing attendees, or if they're one and the same. And so if somebody wants to write in the chat box and let us know what program you participate in that might be affected by that would be helpful to know.
We have a question from Zara Pike asking what types of things would they be learning?
For HUD, I guess can you give me any more information than that, Tammy? I'm sorry.
Well, that's all the question says. I'm going to assume that she's asking what types of things would they be learning as in the housing counselor training, perhaps? It looks like we've got FSS people attending. A couple of people have responded that they're FSS or learning FSS.
Well, in this particular session, we're here to provide information on the HUD Housing Counselor Certification Rule and how that affects programs like FSS. And to share information about the HUD Housing Counseling Program and how certification does affect any housing counseling that's being provided under a HUD program.
Vanessa Sanchez has said we have an HCV homeownership program, but we are not a HUD certified housing counseling agency. We refer to Neighbor Impact, who is our HUD certified counseling agency in our area.
And that's an excellent example of the partnerships that this rule will be creating. The fact that evidently the HCB program, the housing counseling that's required by that program, since it is required by HUD, it does fall under this certification rule, and that counseling will need to be provided by a HUD certified counselor as of August 1st, 2021. So that's good to hear that the agency has already has in place those connections to route their consumers to. And if we don't have any other questions, we can certainly turn this over to Ann, and she can start her portion of the program.
Robin, we have one more real quick question that asks what the average time that it takes to be certified.
We have some information on that, and we like to use 5 months as a standard, and that includes training, for the certification exam, taking the exam, and then actually applying for certification. So if you're a quick study, it can certainly be done faster than that. But that is our average, give everybody enough time to get it done, timeline.
And they're asking about the cost.
And the cost of the exam is $60 if it's taken online, and $100 if it's taken at the test center. Okay, is that it, Tammy?
Yes, ma'am. That appears to be all right now. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to email us at that housing.counseling@hud.gov, and we will be happy to get back with you.
And I also have my personal email address at the end of the presentation, so feel free to email me directly too. This is Robin. Okay, thank you all for your time.
We'll turn it over to Ann Keeney.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I am now trying to share my screen. Is it?
It looks like you've got it up.
Okay, I want to get it into slideshow mode.
Yep.
Let's see. There we go. Okay. Well, I am going to be sharing a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing at the Seattle Housing Authority. This is pretty brand new. We've been at it for 2 years, so we don't have everything figured out, but I'm happy to share some of the innovations that we've been working on with our FSS program. The other thing I'd like to say is we are a moving to work agency, so that has allowed us to do all these innovations. So I understand that that gives us a lot of leeway, and for those that are not MTW agencies, it might seem pretty cool that we get this authority to do that, but I do have some thoughts about some of the big changes that we've made, and if you don't have MTW authority, how you might be able to execute on that as well. The other thing is we're a big agency, and so just having that also as part of the context as well. So our changes that we started just 2 years ago, and these are the 3 biggest ones. One is that we combined our employment programs into one. So we were offering a FSS program and a ROS program, and they were separate with somewhat separate goals and separate criteria. And one of the big things we did is we put those grant criteria and all of that kind of behind the scenes, and we created one program called JobLink. So in the past, people would be asked if they're head of household, do you want to join FSS or do you want to join ROS? And so right now it's the same program offered, same set of services to everybody. So it was all about simplifying the program. The other big change that we made was that the escrow is not just for the head of household. So we found a way that we were able to bring it to anybody who qualified. That certainly changed the amount of escrow, which I'll talk about. So we weren't able to give the same dollar amount, big dollar amounts that if it was just the head of household. So I'll also share that as well. And then the third thing is what we did was we really clarified the services to the residents and tracked our outcomes. And this is what I call, we made our work visible to each other and to the agency. So we really understood who was coming into the program and how they were moving along in their milestones. So when we started 2.5 years ago, and I started 6 months before we did all this stuff, or about maybe 9 months, these were the directives that we were given: to serve more residents, to serve them along an economic continuum, understanding that people come to us maybe in crisis or some instability and moving on to more stability and then to whatever they want to do if they want to leave housing, get better jobs, all of that. So we understand that people come along in continuum and the services have to be organized that way. And then building strategic partnerships, both in the community and then also throughout our agency. So here's kind of the headlines. After the first year, we dramatically increased our enrollments and our job placements. We looked at looking at our data, looking at the diversity of residents that we serve. So we serve young people, 18 to 24. Some of them are in community college or four-year. Some of them are not in school, not working. We serve a whole bunch of residents that are between the age of 25 and 45. Our most common profile is a woman in her 40s taking care of kids. And then we also serve people over 55. We were really surprised how many 60 and 70-year-olds were coming to us for help with employment. So we've been thinking about partnering with AARP and others, which I'll talk about. So it's real diversity of residents. And then we offered this new pathway to education, in particular the community college. And then we offered a new, and I'll talk more about this, industry sector focus. So we really are helping people get jobs in the economy by sector and not just any job, but I can talk more about that. So again, after the first year, we had over 900 enrollments. So we did a very aggressive outreach efforts. We had 230 job placements, and we worked with about 200 individuals, either in community college, four-year university, or training programs, the top being healthcare, and that was across about 400 enrollments throughout the year. So the way we did it is we really stepped back and took time to plan and got really super clear of where we were trying to go. So I talked about simplifying the program and refining the service model. And a lot of the refining the service model was around motivational interviewing and using that as our client-centered approach. The other thing is that we picked a North Star. So we know that 70% of the jobs in Washington State require some education beyond high school. So those were the jobs that we were trying to help people to get. So people could come to us and that might not be their goal. They just need a job right away. But we're always talking to them about how are we moving them to that, those other jobs, those more competitive jobs, those jobs that pay more. So education is just really weaved throughout the program. So I'm going to talk about three of the innovations that we did. And the first one is around our financial support. So we restructured completely our escrow accounts. So instead of just when someone gets a rent increase or earns more money, gets a rent increase, and then escrow, the difference goes into the escrow, we broke it up. We broke it up to financial supports in education and employment and retention, and then a separate savings account. So the first is, and we're incentivizing full-time work throughout this and full-time education. So full-time education, you get $300 per quarter for up to 8 quarters. And the purpose of this is we looked at the research and a lot of people were dropping out of school because they couldn't pay for a bus pass or some extra books or those kinds of things. So we give this up front to help people get over that barrier as they're kind of enrolling in school. So we're incentivizing full-time education there. On the employment, after 1 month on the job and 4 months on the job, you get a $300 credit or $300 payment, financial support. This is on a debit card that people get. And then once you hit the 5th month, again, if you're working full-time, which is 32 hours a week, you'll get a $200 credit and you can earn $200 up to $5,000. We picked $5,000 as the savings account total because that was the average that American families have in savings. Of course, that's through all America at all different levels. So that's not necessarily the average savings account of individuals that are living in public housing, but we wanted to pick something that was meaningful and that definitely represented where most American families are. Our hope is to find some matching dollars to be able to raise that, but that's what we have right now. The second feature was the education. So we have two staff members, they work for the college, but we pay their contract to work with our residents. So they're working with anywhere from 60 to 80 students a quarter, and they're helping them find the right program, the right classes, and the right funding. What we saw was a lot of our residents were going to college and they were steered in the wrong direction, or they were unsure. They ended up taking the wrong classes that didn't add up to the credential. So we wanted to really wrap around our residents, also helping them persist along the way and really being able to take advantage of everything that the college has to offer in terms of funding and extra support and those kinds of things. And then lastly, we changed up the notion around job development. So this is our industry sector focus. This is, we have two employer brokers. So these are people, if you think about job development, a lot of times it's going online and Indeed and finding the job for the person. What we're trying to do is really get to hone in on specific sectors, really get to know the HR representatives in a couple key companies, and be able to ask them, in essence, to take the resume of our residents and pull it to the top. And we really try, and then we start selling our resident on why they should get the job. Sometimes the HR folks are not open to that, but most often they are. They say, oh, tell me more about the person you're promoting and why they would be a good fit. The other thing that they're doing is they're going in and they're really understanding what are these jobs, and you can read a job description, but often the company is really emphasizing one or two things. And so we really try and get that information ahead of time. The other thing is the employer broker, because they have these good relationships with the employers, they can find out if our resident doesn't get the job. We can find out why. Sometimes we've had situations where they've said, oh, I thought about another job that's better, a better fit for them. So again, we're kind of in there working on behalf of the resident in these specific industry sectors. The other thing that we're really trying to do is build professional networks for our residents, and they're doing it themselves. We know that over close to half of our residents in housing are already working, either part-time or full-time. So some people do come to us with jobs, wanting to get better jobs. So we're really building on their professional networks, and we're using our own team's professional networks and the employer brokers' professional networks to help our residents, so that they, when they leave us, hopefully they have a LinkedIn account, and that they can be able to leverage so that they can move forward with career advancement as well, which we also help with. So our key learnings was, I mentioned the wide diversity of employment needs, from our students who need part-time jobs to our individuals that are over 55, in 70 that are looking for part-time jobs to supplement their income, and then everybody in between. We have a lot of English as a second language among our residents, so that's a high need as well. We always thought that we kind of thought of residents as we talked about that continuum: high needs, medium needs, and low needs. The other thing that we learned is, obviously some of our residents are more active with us, high activity, medium activity, and low activity. So you could have someone who has a high needs but a very low activity, and there's again, trying to tailor the services to them is very different than those people who are low needs but very high activity and can kind of move forward with direction and, you know, quick check-ins, that kind of thing. The other thing that we learned is more training around motivational interviewing. And again, really having the resident lead the conversation around what they're interested in doing, education and employment wise. So our team approach with our residents and with each other and with our partners is to be inspiring, motivating, and welcoming. As I mentioned, we're very resident centered, and we spent a lot of time really looking at data, trying to improve, try to ask ourselves, ask our residents, showing them some of the data, showing our team, what advice do they have for us about how we can make the program more relevant. So that's my presentation. Let me see. I'll stop the screen share and see if there's any questions. Ah, okay, lots of questions. Let's see. New message. Do we have a Jobs Plus grant as well? We don't. We don't. So the way we've done this is, again, taking both criterias of both grants and kind of making them relevant across everybody. So with FSS, we need to have 50 clients per coordinator, except for one coordinator can have 25. So we make that a standard across everybody. So that's just one way that we've been able to do that. How many coordinators do we have? We have 10. Well, we have 10 career coaches. We have 7 that are funded by FSS. So with just that quick overview, I guess I just answered everybody's questions. Again, we have not figured it all out. We're learning as we go, and we've had some really great successes with having more of that interaction with the employers. And one of our biggest challenges right now, we have the FUP grant, which funds our foster care youth, aging out, young adults rather. And that's a group that, again, when you think along that continuum, that we're constantly having to rethink how we have provide services to them. And we're right in the throes of trying to figure that out and really design stuff that works for them. Let's see, by restructuring your escrow, are more families now receiving escrow? Is the amount that is paid out through escrow greater or lesser than previous? So we're just in the early stages. So we have about 600 plus folks in our program right now. We actually have had a wait list, and then we've been rethinking, obviously, with the COVID. So people are just starting to hit that 2.5-year mark. So we'll see, we'll be able to compare. The amount is $5,000. It's less than some of them that I saw when I first came to Seattle Housing Authority. I remember seeing escrows of 20 and 30, 10,000, 7,000, but I saw quite a few of $5,000, $6,000 as well. Have you changed the FSS sports due to COVID? We have not. So it's been tricky how to figure this out. So we do have quite a few residents that are still getting jobs. I mean, obviously our residents are, many of them are frontline essential workers, so they are getting jobs. So we're still distributing those financial supports. We have actually centralized it. They used to go through their one of the 10 career coaches, but now they come to our main office, and we, actually I do it because I still go into the office 2 days a week, and another colleague. So we do still give them the escrow, the financial supports. And then for those people that were working and their job has been paused, they're still getting the $200 credit, because it's no fault of their own that they don't have a job, but the employer is saying that they will have a job when they reopen. And several of them have already started to reopen. Any other questions?